Mikhaila.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you for doing it
Yes.
kind of late. I know it takes a while to figure out a good time, especially when you're a mom, because there's just so many things that are constantly changing. Like, well, how is the nap going to be? What if there's any issues? What if my other
Yes.
schedule? So I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you coming on. I actually had a crazy schedule with my little one and her naps today. So I'm so glad that it just worked
Worked out.
out.
Yes.
Yes. Did you have any
Yeah.
problems?
No, thankfully. My little one, well, I say he's not my littlest. He's 3, but he went down a little bit later for his nap. And so then I kept thinking to myself, okay, he really needs this nap, but tonight might be very difficult as far as like bedtime routine and making sure he goes to bed on time and stuff. Like, it's crazy how the tiniest little difference throws them completely off.
It's like
Like,
a whole new level of math that you have to start doing when you become a mom. You're just like, okay, well, they woke up at this time and then they're supposed to go down, their wake window is only so much and then their nap needs to be
mm-hmm.
so long and then overall nap time during the day versus how much they're going to sleep during in the night. Mine usually does she wakes up 2 hours awake, an hour nap, 3 hours awake, 2 hour nap, 6 hours awake, and then we go to bed. And she's been so good about it. And then today she
Of
slept
all
in.
days.
Yep. She said, and she goes to bed really late. Like she goes to bed 12:30 and wakes up around 10. So she does a little bit later anyways. But
Yeah.
she woke up at 11:50.
Oh my gosh.
So it was almost time for her first nap.
Mm-hmm.
And she woke up at noon and I was like, I just don't even know where this is going to go now. I have no idea. I have no idea at all. And so I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll still stick to she'll have to take her first nap 2 hours after.
Mm-hmm.
No,
No, of course
no,
not.
no. She went to, and then I was like, well, if she takes her first nap now, then if I make sure she stays awake for 3-4 hours, I can make sure she goes down for her nap before I start the podcast, or maybe I'll be after, I'm trying to calculate this all day long. And then she finally goes down at 3:50, so almost 4 o'clock. And I'm like, she's going to be up and then she'll need to lay down right when I start. How am I going to do
Yeah.
this? And then she slept for 3 hours.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then got up right before. So my husband's watching her, which is so helpful. And I'm not worried about her needing me or anything because she got good rest and I'm sure she got her milk. But it was just so completely off the norm. And of course, me, because I'm just that way, I'm just overthinking it this whole time. I'm like, what am I going to do? What if it's this time? What if it's that time? And again,
I do the same thing.
It's so hard not to because you try to plan ahead and they're like, I've got a different plan, mommy.
Yeah, let me throw you a curveball real quick.
Yeah. So tell me about yourself because I only did a little bit of snooping. We met through social media and you reached out to me, which I was so thankful for because I love meeting new people and I'm so excited that I have guests. I thought I was going to be a loser. No one's going to want to talk to me. So I'm so excited that I have people who want to talk to me. But through my snooping, I saw that you have 3 boys and then you just got a baby girl.
Yes. We were so excited when we did the ultrasound to see, what we were having and stuff. When they told me that it was finally a little girl, I'm like, can you double check? And then they would go and do some, this is her head, this is her arms. And I'm like, okay, but can we check the ginger one more time? I just want to be sure.
Well, there's so many stories you hear where people were expecting one thing and then
get another.
Yes. So I totally understand.
I mean, no doubt about it. We would have been just as excited with a boy, but we have 3 of them. We wanted both,
Yeah, I was so surprised. Girl, you've got three sons and then your husband. So you got 4 boys you're taking care of. And then now you've got a baby girl on your side. So I'm like, all right, we're starting to even it out.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how far back you went, but so we are a blended family. So the 2 older boys, one is mine and one is my husband's, and we brought each of them into our relationship.
I'm sorry, they just look so similar.
Oh,
when I look at them
it all the time.
I was really surprised to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
We get that all the time, and then they're only 3 months apart. So literally, it was like my husband and I, when we got together, they were almost 1, and then like 7 months old, I think. 7 and 10 months. So yeah, it's like literally having twins running around the house when we had first
when I saw
together.
The picture, I was like, they're not triplets, but I was like, those could be almost like they look very similar, and your family looks so cohesive, and you just like, because I was looking on the gram, I was like, you guys' pictures look so cute. You know, it's this whole family, and you guys are all, and the boys are all dressed up. And then I saw the little photo shoot of your daughter, and it's just so precious. And I mean, of course, you don't know what's really about a family just from pictures, but like your pictures of your family look legit. Like they look.
Oh, thank you.
Like you guys have it all together, which makes me really happy.
Well, that makes me happy too, because we ain't got it all together over here.
Well, I'd love to hear about that.
We have our craziness too.
I bet with 3 boys. So I have a baby girl, but from what I hear, my boy mom's post, it's mostly on social media that I read it, is that they're wild.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
They just bounce off walls.
Yes. I have, one of the boys, he's 7. So, and he would be the oldest. He is like more calm and like just mellow, go with the flow, like, but he can get crazy. But then my other 7-year-old and my 3-year-old boy, oh my gosh. Like, I feel like they would knock the walls down if I just let them run wild, because they're trying to do like parkour on the walls. They're trying to jump off the couches. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, well, I wanted to try this move and I wanted to do that. And I'm like, that's probably an outside thing, not an inside thing.
Wow. Do you think your oldest is a little more calm and, let's say, mature, for lack of a better word, because he has younger siblings and he has to like watch over them? Or is that something that's been part of his personality always growing up? He's just kind of been more mellow.
Yeah, that's really just kind of been part of his personality though, from the get-go. Like, he's just been very easy, go with the flow type of ordeal. He really, as long as he knows the schedule, like he likes, he's very like on a routine, right? So we have like a calendar up in the kitchen that shows like if we have certain things that we're doing that day or whatever. He'll be like, okay, so when you, like for this instance, he's like, so when you do your podcast interview, where are we going to be? And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to grandma's house. So, and he's like, okay. And then like, we have Uncle Matt's birthday party. Are they coming to our house? Are we going there? Like, he just wants to be in the know 100% of the time.
I love him because that's just how I am. I want to know. I want to know because I need to know. Sometimes I'm like, in a way, I think of it like I just want to know so I can plan ahead, or I can get stuff that we need. Or if for some reason I'm always thinking like, well, what if I'm planning a surprise? I have to know where everybody is so then I could like, bake the cookies in time or do the thing in time or the thing gets delivered. I don't even throw them any surprises, but I'm always like, I gotta know so then I can. I don't know. It's a control thing and I'm working on it, but I'm totally like your son where like I love calendars. I love things written out. I love highlighters where I can be like, this is crossed off, so this is done. And now we're moving on to this part of the day. Like, it makes me so happy to have that organization. It's such a weird thing, but I'm with your son where I'm like, oh my gosh, give me a calendar. If I know what's going on, I'm so there with you.
Yes.
But then if not, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's parking, so why am I going to go? Like, it's just too much stress. And it isn't ever, but like in my mind.
No, but in our minds, we make it that way.
Yeah. Would you say you're similar to your son in that way also? Or
yeah. Yeah. Like, I have a calendar on my phone. I have the monthly calendar on our wall, like, and I'm constantly checking, making sure that it like aligns. Everything is the same. Like, and then I write notes like on my phone. There's, I don't even know, like the littlest things, I'll be like, I don't like what room something's in, or like I don't know, whatever the case may be, like I'll just write notes or what I was thinking like about this appointment, or especially for my 4-month-old, like if there are certain things that I want to talk about with the pediatrician, you don't ever remember that when you're sitting in there. Like, so I try to like make a mental note. Doesn't happen all the time, but I try to make a mental note, like in her appointment reminder, like writing down, hey, she did this. Is this normal? Or maybe she's not doing this yet. Like,
Yeah, I'm like, you're
So,
so smart. When we had our pediatrician appointments, there were certain things that came up that I wanted to ask her about. And so my way of remembering is sometimes I'll ask my husband and I'll be like, hey, can you remind me to do this? And somehow telling him, although he might not remind me, telling him to remind me, I usually remember.
yeah.
And there's this thing, she was having like a little breakout and I got like a video of it. So I was like, hey, can you remind me to show this video to the doctor? I had favorited it so then I can find it when I need to. And he's like, why don't you just write this in the appointment, in the notes, even include stuff? I was like, what? I didn't even know
like
this.
Mind blown.
Yeah. Then I just he just gave me the opening. He opened those gates and I was like, let me write all of this down then, but I found it so useful because then things change, especially with babies every single day. So whatever you were concerned about, not that you forget, but like there's just so many things accumulating in your mind.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you ask all these things. Are they hitting the right milestones? Is their weight okay? What is this? Is this supposed to be like this? What, like just all this stuff. And so you're so smart for doing it already in your appointment notes. And for me, it took a few appointments for my husband to be like, why don't you?
But here's the thing. You only have one baby.
I do.
And I've had 3 other times to try to get this right. So 4th time for me is the charm. That's what made it work. So you're already ahead of the game.
So much power to you. With one baby, and she's a girl. So if we're, generalizing, saying girls are a little more calm than the boys. So I have this calm baby. She's nowhere near calm necessarily, but I have this one, and I am struggling for time. Getting this chunk, let's say an hour for the podcast is such a thing, and almost sometimes can be a stressful thing where I'm like trying to align it. Is this going to work? But I'm so happy I'm doing it. But I struggle figuring out my day. Like, she's not difficult in any way. It's just, I want to give her all my time. And when I think about having more kids, I really struggle. How will I, manage my time? And I know I've heard it that moms say you just figure it out. Because as moms, that's what we do. We figure it out. And anyone with twins, let's say, like, they just have to figure it out immediately,
right out the get-go.
Yeah, those things come into your life and you just figure it out. But I praise all the moms in general, and especially those who are having multiple kids, because it's never ending. And not only is it physical exhaustion and you're tired and you're doing all of these things, but mentally just keeping track of all the appointments, the scheduling, the practices, the rehearsals, the recitals, the things, the birthdays, the birthday parties, the presents, like it just accumulates and you can't not think about it.
Right.
If you're in the know, you're like, all right. And you start planning and then you're coordinating. And it's this like constantly moving, I don't know, like octopus where you're just like, all these things and I must do it. And it's never really ending. And the only time you get rest is when you lay down and then, you lay there and you're like, oh, I got to do this, this, and this tomorrow. And then this and this, let me take some notes. And so all the power to all the moms. Like now I've stepped into motherhood. I've always had an admiration for moms because I just think it's, you're raising a whole human who's going to do something.
Yes. And you only get them for like, let's say 18 years. And then what happens when they move out or they go away for college? Like you only have this short amount of time to raise them, to be good people, to do good. And then you just send them off. Like, you know, it's scary.
There's so much that goes into it too. Cause it's, you have to teach them stuff and you have to tell them things and you have to explain things to them so they kind of, understand and comprehend. But on this other deeper level, you have to make sure that they are, they have critical thinking because you're not always going to be there. So when they are 18, when they're 20, when they're 22, 24, whatever, when they're not by your side and you're no longer making decisions for them because they're an independent human being, you want to give them all the skills to make the best decision. So it's not like remembering that tomato is red and like A, B, C, D. Like, how do you utilize your skills, your analytical thinking, your critical thinking? How do you ask questions? How to, I guess in a way, how do you get what you want? Like, how are you going to
get from like point A to point B? Like, what are your steps going to be, you know?
Yeah. And it's from teaching them how to wash their hands to teaching them how to write an essay, to teach like all these little things. But in the end, it's like, I just want you to be able to make the right decision, because when you're no longer here, I want you to succeed.
Right.
But there's just so much that goes. It's like, 18 years, you're like, that's a long time. But like, it goes by quick from what I'm hearing. And you got to shove all of this, like what you've learned in life and what you wish you didn't learn in life, and just like teach them and be like, I already learned this, so please don't learn it, because I already learned the hard way and I want you to have a better life, let's say.
Right. Well, and too, like, you're trying to shove all of this knowledge into them, get them to learn, but then also, like, you still want them to be a kid. You still want them, you don't want them to sit like, prim and proper 24/7. No, you want them to be able to get out and go play and do everything, so that, they get out their energy. They're a kid,
Yeah,
but then it's like,
play.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, okay, well, we still have to learn X, Y, Z, but you just have to figure it out, basically. Like, as things come up, that's when you put your lessons in, I guess. That's what we do, at least, like, and we try to, because I have multiple, and it'll be the same for you, but with just the one right now, but like learning to problem solve, like on their own, without saying, hey, Mom, I can't find my other shoe. Okay, well, how are you going to find it? Like, retrace your steps, or just go pick out a different pair of shoes, or whatever the case, it's like, you don't always have to come to Mom or to Dad to solve the little things. Like, let's think about it, let's problem solve. And that's especially helpful with me, just to get them thinking about it, because I have multiple, so it's like, if I'm feeding the baby and they need me to jump up and help, they want me to, jump up and help with something, I'm like, okay, well, think about it for a second. Like, could you do this and, solve the problem on your own? Like, can you go do it yourself?
That's such a good advice, and something that I really need to like literally write down, because I have two thoughts about this. When I think about it, me personally, I'm such a problem solver. And I was my mom's third baby. And so I think she had already figured out how to do everything. And I think she helped me, be independent, and she already had so many kids. So we all had to learn on our own, as well as being raised by her. And I thank her for it. But I'm very much a problem solver. I will take, one activity and I'll figure out 20 different ways of how to do it. If I need to substitute a material or find it somewhere else, or find a different way to go around it. Like, I somehow have always found different ways to get where I need to. Right. And I thank my mom for it, for whatever she did to raise me. But on the flip side, because I'm always problem solving and I enjoy helping people, I mean, my husband hates this about me, but I will jump out of my seat. Like, if I was busy right now with this podcast and this is something really important to me, but somebody would come up and say, hey, I need this, I'll be like, hold on. And like, I will put myself on the back burner, go and help them, instead of saying like, oh, you need to go and figure this out on your own. Like, not even to a kid, to an adult, I'll be like, yeah, let me help you. Like, let them figure it out. But in my head, I'm like, oh, I know exactly where it is. I know exactly how I can help you. I know how to do this. So it'll be faster if I just get it. And it's so good, but it's so bad in a way, because I want to help. But then I'm like enabling this dependency where they're like, oh, Lily will always get it. Lily will always do it. And it's not helpful. And I want to make sure I don't, I guess, spoil my baby, because when she says, I need this or I need a shoe, I know mentally and like in my heart, I want to be like, yes, let me get it for you, sweetheart. But I need to remember exactly what you're saying, is because I would love for her to learn the problem solving skills. And
right.
And I'm going to be battling myself because I'm going to want to go and pick her shoes and like, oh, let's just do it this way. Let me help you. But I know that I need to say, how would you go about finding that? How would we solve this? Let's go do it together even, but let's go find it, and not just jump to help. Like I need to hold myself back because I already do it where she's kind of like points at something and I'm like, let me get it for you, sweetheart. And only recently I'm like, no, she can now crawl. She's doing things on her own. I need to wait because if she really wants it, she can go get it herself.
Right.
Not that I'm being mean. It's just.
No, but it's teaching her, Yeah.
It's hard.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because
it's hard.
even when I'll tell them, like, why don't you go look in your room, or how are you going to solve this? In my head, I've already solved it 10 different ways. Yeah. So then I'm like, and then I'll catch myself too. I'll be like, you solve it. So I'm thinking of what's the best way that they could solve this in my head. And if they start doing something else, I'll catch myself like, okay, I need to be quiet because otherwise because in my head, I want to say, no, maybe you should do it this way. But I'm like, no, they're getting it done. They'll learn. If that was the hard way, the next time, maybe they'll think of a different way. And they may come to that on their own.
Yeah. I catch myself sometimes doing this to my husband, which is so unfair because he's so great and he's so smart and he knows exactly how to do things. Even if he picks up like a new activity or hobby or something, he figures it out.
Right.
But if I in my head have already thought of how to do it, if it's like a cooking thing or it's like whatever, I'll be like, oh, what if you do it this way? And then I'm like, no, he wants to do it his way. And I want to, if it's the dish, I want to try it this way. But like something in me, I'm like, well, I know this tip or I know this thing. And maybe like, let me just tell you. And it's something I love and dislike about myself. Cause I'm like, just sit down and shush. Cause if he knows it, he knows it. If he doesn't, he's going to learn. And like, why am I even in his grill about it? But like, I'm so self-conscious about it almost where I'm just like, dang it, just like sit back, go busy yourself. And I'm so busy already, but I'm like, go busy yourself with something else than like helicoptering over everybody.
Yes. And okay, so if you're having, I don't know, just like a day where you're just frustrated or even like you've just taken on a lot, like my husband sometimes will be like, hey, let me do the dishes tonight. You go sit down and relax. So then I will go sit down, but I do not relax.
You're just thinking about
in my head. Well, I'm thinking like, okay, great. He's got the dishes done. I still need to get done. I wanted to fold that load of laundry, or I, needed to pick up the living room with the kids and stuff or whatever. And then I'll like get up and he'd be like, I was doing something for you. Like you said you wanted to relax. And I'm like, yes, but in my brain, this all needs to be done before I can truly relax.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I'm so there with you. And I have such a hard time, I guess, communicating it clearly because my husband's the same way. He wants to help me so much. And he's like, oh, I'll clean that. And I'll be like, oh, let me just clean it now so then it doesn't dry. So it's like, because once I finish this, I can actually move on to this. And in my head, I have already kind of planned what I needed to do. And this is a step that needs to be completed before I can move on. And, and sometimes I will step on his toes where he's like, I was doing that. I was going to get to it. If you just give me the time, if you just give me a second, I would have gotten to it. And I feel bad because I'm like, I know he wants to help and I'm not doing it correctly. And he sometimes he's like, go take a bath, go relax. And I'll try it and I'll try to get work done on my phone. Cause I'm like, all right, well, my toes are soaking, but like, I need to make sure this is done and this is done and this is done. Yeah. And at the same time, I'm complaining about needing a break. Like for a while, he started taking our baby for like a stroll in our neighborhood, it's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He's like, just relax, just don't do anything. And then he comes back, the kitchen's clean, the playroom is clean. I'm like, I got this done, I got this done. He's like, I asked you to relax. He's like, I asked you to relax so I can help you. And you aren't taking the help. Like, why won't you just listen? Right. And I'm like, I can't, because I feel like I'm wasting time. If I have time that I'm not devoting to the baby and I have all these things in my head that I need to get done, when I do have a second, I'm like, let me get this done and this done and this done. but I want to relax and I want to break. I just can't do it yet. It's like, what is that? Is that is that the motherhood? Is like, just figure it out and ask for a break, but never take one. What is that?
Pretty much that's been my experience. But I also like, it could get easier and like better as all the babies get bigger, but I've just kept adding. Like, I kept adding to my plate. So,
well, I've heard that, like, you know, with your second one, it gets easier. With your third one, it gets a little more easier because a lot of the anxiety of the unknown is, you know, no longer there. Although there are surprises and things that are new with every baby, of course. Certain things that you know, as a first-time mom, there's certain things I didn't know. Now I would know.
Right.
And I mean, just the anxiety and the overwhelming worry itself, once that's off your shoulders, you're just like, okay, I can kind of breathe a little bit. So, I mean, so I can see how that gets easier and easier.
Yeah.
And easier.
Well, and two, like, because the I call them my big boys, but my 2 7-year-olds, they like are really good big brothers. So like, if I just need to, hey, let me knock these dishes out really quick, or like they will play with the 3-year-old and watch the 4-month-old. Like, I'll put her in her swing or whatever in the living room with them, and they'll like play around her and put little toys in front of her and like try to entertain her and stuff, just so I can have, you know, 10 minutes to get that done. So it's nice when they get older too, because then they can start entertaining themselves and each other.
You get that extra help.
And it's not just only mom or only dad trying to entertain the baby. And then as soon as you leave to go and do something, you know, chaos breaks out.
Yeah. It's silly. I know it'll get easier as she gets older, and I'm getting so much better at it now. But let's say when she was like 6 months old, 8 months old, I really struggled being away from her because I felt like I was the only way to soothe her and for her to feel comfortable. And if I was away for even like 5, I mean, she's so attached and I'm so attached to her. But I felt like if I was away for 5 minutes and I heard her crying, that I needed to come and help her immediately. And I struggled taking any time away from her because I'm like, if she's crying, she needs me. And if I can help it, why wouldn't I be there? And then now she's older and she's realizing more things and learning more things. And it's a little bit easier for me to be like, oh no, other people can also help her. Like, you know, I'm growing and learning as she's also growing and learning that, like, oh, you know,
it's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. And it's okay to spend a little more time away from mom. And it's okay for others to soothe her and help her. We're kind of like switching to solid foods, but we're still on breast milk mostly. She's just kind of tasting. And so before anytime she'd start crying, like the boob would just help. And it's like this problem solver immediately. And then now it's more like, oh, let's sit and not necessarily talk about your feelings, but like, let's sit and just feel it out. You're crying and you don't need the boob right now. It's just, you know, she fell and let's just sit with it because it's all right that something sudden happened. And, you know, the dad can also help her, the grandma, and help her through that. It's not only mom. And it's in a way, you know, I'm like, oh, I can breathe. I'm getting that separation. But then I'm like, as soon as it's complete, this like downloading process, she's not going to necessarily need me anymore. And then I'm going to be so sad because
it's going to break your heart.
Yeah. I'm already like, I live in this way of thinking of, I never want to look back and think, oh, I should have spent more time with her, or napped more with her, or fed her, like kept her on me, napping more. So I take all of them in. Like when she's napping, I'm right next to her because I never want to look back thinking, oh, I missed a nap. I wish I could have done it more. And so I live in this thing of like, I need to make sure I'm there because I don't want to, because when it's done and it's flying by already so quickly, I won't be able to get it back. I'm not going to be able to breastfeed her again. Like when she's 5, I'm not going to be like, hey, like you want to boob it up? Yeah. And so I guess that's just the whole motherhood of like trying to balance those feelings of, hey, I want you to grow and succeed and develop all those abilities we talked about, but also I want to take it all in because I'm going to miss it. Like it's such a bond. I really didn't expect that. I mean, I heard about it, but like when they're born and you're just like, you're a
In
whole
awe.
human.
Yeah.
And you're a part of me. You're,
Yeah. Like somebody could tell you that all day long, but until you like physically experience it, it's a whole different level.
Yeah.
Whole different level. Which like with her, my baby, she's most likely going to be like our last baby. So
Okay.
I am soaking it all in. And like with her, I was finally able to like get the whole breastfeeding thing down. And like we've had such an amazing journey with that. So then I'm like, okay, like I finally got my girl. She's finally breastfeeding. Like, and I don't know, like, because my mom would tell me all the time, like, when you're breastfeeding, like it's just like a bond between the mom and the baby. And like I got it because with the other ones, like I did breastfeed for a little bit, but we could never get the latch down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also working when I had them. So like I didn't have the time, the patience, anything like that to like put into it. So I was like, oh, it's just easier to do formula. So we would stop breastfeeding sooner. But like with, her, like I'm a stay-at-home mom now and I get to have that time and she picked it up so easily. So then it's like a whole new experience for me that I didn't get to have beforehand.
Yeah.
So I'm soaking it in as well. And like you said, like as soon as they cry, like the boob helps. I don't know what the magic with them, but it helps.
It's such a magic button. And like,
mm-hmm.
I feel bad because sometimes my husband will comment on, like he just doesn't have that. Like,
right.
She loves me because I'm mom, but also I'm like her food, like I just can show up and there's the goods.
Yeah.
And unfortunately he doesn't, he can't have that experience. Although at the very beginning, I had also struggled with latching on and I was unsure about my milk and just, it was a little crazy for me. So we had started pumping and then he was able to feed her and kind of get that bonding experience. And then we had fully switched over to nursing. But it's silly how that like communication works. Like sometimes I'll hear her crying and then my boob just starts tingling and I'm like, it's time. Yes. Or right before she's about to get fussy, sleepy, needing the boob, it'll just kind of fill up and it'll start tingling where I'm like, it is time. And I like pick her up and they're talking in different rooms. My boob and her are talking and I'm not even part of the conversation until my boob starts talking to me. Like I'm the third party of this convo, but like there's this connection that's undeniable. That's just like, they're having their own Wi-Fi and they're strongly connected. And I'm like, oh, all right. Like, let's chat about it. And then we just boob it up and she's happy and it flows. And it's such I don't know what your religious stand of, where you stand on it, but this baby has brought me close to God. Yes. And now that I'm just like, she was gifted to me by God. And he said, you will watch over this child and I trust you to raise this beautiful, beautiful potato and you are going to love it and raise it and you will communicate with it. And it like blows my mind that I'm like, she's a real human person that was inside of me that I grew a separate organ for to like live in and feed off. And then I am able to give birth and feed it from my body. Like,
right. Like it's crazy.
What is that? You can't explain that. That's like just God saying like, you will be my helper to bring and raise this child for whatever it is that I'm getting shivers right now.
Yeah, I have the chills. Like my arms are like, oh
my God, I swear God's right here just like watching over us.
Yeah.
But like we are entrusted by God to like raise these human beings. Like, whatever that is that they're going to do, it's going to be so great and wonderful. Like they're going to have relationships and friendships and they're going to say important things and make differences in other people's lives. And God's like, they are so important. And I'm going to put you in charge for a little bit of time until, of course, God's always there looking over, but we're just like these helpers of God who are like, okay, you're going to give me all of this blessing and I'm going to help you because then this person's going to go on and do like, it's just so magical. Like, it's so hard for me to comprehend because I'm just like, I mean, before that, the only thing that came out of my body was just like, I don't know, pee and poop. And then this is like a whole human. Yeah. And they have their personality. Like, yeah, they start out as this potato that like doesn't move. But then really early on, you start seeing these peaks of who they're going to be. These little like, how they make little decisions. What they kind of find. Like, I swear my baby's super funny. Like, I'm really funny. I like to say that. But like, she's so funny and she's little. And I'm like, you're going to like, you know, you just watch them
like
do these
prodigy.
Yeah. And I just know she's like already prettier and smarter than me. And she's going to be so, and I want her to just like, I don't want her to have any restraints. Sometimes now that I've had her, and I'm learning what I should and should not teach her, I'm doing a lot of self-reflecting. And so I'm like, what do I need to make sure I teach you? And what do I need to make sure I do not teach you? Because I want her to have all the freedom within boundaries, but all the freedom to explore and be herself. And so it's this like, I talked about it with somebody else, but I'm like, I feel like I'm reborn again. So like through God, through this birth, I'm reborn. And we're now, her and I like side by side, and we're just both exploring. We're like, swimming together, and she's kind of learning and then I'm kind of learning, and we're both kind of swaying, and it's just it's so hard for me to like even express sometimes. It's so incredible and powerful, and like I just love moms. Like, what the heck? Like, what?
All that we like go through and we can do, like, this has definitely been one of the greatest journeys for me, at least, you know, and learning with my kids, like, because even like, let's say things that I did with the 7-year-olds, I'll start to incorporate with my 3-year-old, and he's like, no, we're not doing it this way, you know, like he wants a whole different path on his own. So then it's like each kid, we're learning like what works best for them. And even like, as far as discipline comes, like one kiddo is, if you get loud, he shuts down. So like, you know, we can't get onto him that way. So you have to learn like hit the way that he receives his discipline, but then also make it fair to the other, you know? So it's like,
wow. Yeah. I haven't really thought about that. I understand how you have to differ the discipline per kid, because you want to make sure it gets through and they get the point and they get the actual lesson. But the comparison of making sure the other kids feel valid in the discipline they had received, because it's going to look different. And so they will question like, well, why do I get yelled at but he doesn't? Or why does he get a timeout but I don't? Like, to share that responsibility and discipline.
And like, so the 3-year-old, you know, I can take things away from him as far as like if he's like throwing them or what, like I can take that stuff. Okay, if we're not going to, you know, be nice to our toys, then we can't play with them right now, and we'll take them away. And then, but for the most part, like we have him sit down in it, like time out, so to say, but he'll sit down and, okay, why don't you think about, you know, what just happened, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes. Whereas the bigger boys, like, they usually just, okay, you know what? Like, this is going to have to be taken away right now because we can't do that. Like, they don't get necessarily a timeout anymore. And so then like my 3-year-old, he's very, very, very smart, like too smart for his own good. But he'll be like, well, how come Bryson and McKinley don't have to sit down in the chair? Like, or how come, you know, this? And I'm like, well, like, they have their own punishments. You have yours, you know? And so we like trying to navigate all of that is like crazy.
Yeah, that's so, well, because everybody learns so differently, and you want to be fair at the same time as being, I guess, exclusively selective per person, if you will. Like, you know, the punishment must match the crime almost, which like to the person.
Yeah.
Plus they're different in age, so different things are going to apply. It's such a, and you can't listen to other moms necessarily, because anyone with a 7-year-old or a 3-year-old, their kids are different and their parenting styles are different. There's just so many variants that you can't compare at all because it just won't. I think it's good to listen to all advice and take whatever you can benefit from, but it's impossible to fully compare and say, oh, this is actually going to work exactly the same way. And if it helped this mom, it's also going to help me. I just don't think that's realistic in any way.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, I think with the whole thing, like I've just come to realize and like understanding myself, they're each going to think it's not fair. Like, because they don't want to be punished. You know, obviously nobody wants to be punished, but it's like, even if I feel like if I were to give them all the same punishment, then it's, oh, well, that's not fair because, you know, so-and-so did X, Y, Z, and I only did X. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, either way, they're all going to say it's not fair, however you discipline them, you know?
Yeah. I was going to ask you, you had mentioned that with the boys, you were working as well as raising them. And then now with the baby girl, you're a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. Would you just share more about when you stopped working and transferring over to the home? Was it, I'm guessing you were working for just for financials to support the family, or you loved your job? What was your transition?
So I had always been working. When I met my husband, I was working part-time and then transferred to a different job and was working full-time. But like when I met him, I was a single mom. So I had to work. And then it always just stuck like that. Like I was working, the kids were in, daycare. So it was always just like that. We just had like the two income home or whatever. And then once COVID hit and they shut down the kids' schools, looking at my husband and I's like finances and stuff, like it would have been so ridiculous for us to pay for 3 kids at the time to be in daycare, because we had my now 3-year-old and then the 2 boys. So having 3 of them in full-time daycare because they couldn't go to school anymore, like I would just be I would be working just to pay for daycare. So like in our minds, we were like, let's just have one parent stay home and then raise the kids, be with the kids while you're figuring out this whole homeschooling mess, and then he'll go to work. So I don't know, like it was a hard transition for me, just because I went from like seeing and talking to people and like adults, to now I'm home 7 days a week, 24 hours a day with little people.
Baby toys and baby sounds and baby shows and all these arguments about baby stuff. And you're just
all of it. Yeah. And so and then trying to do Zoom with the boys in their schooling. And at that point they were in kindergarten. So trying to get 5-6-year-olds, I think they were both 5. I think, pretty sure they were both 5, but 2 5-year-olds to sit in front of a computer all day. And I'm like, there's no way. And then also he was 1 at the time. So a 1-year-old who is like making noise, being a kid, like being a baby, wanting to do all the things. Yeah. But then also, hey brothers, what are you guys doing? And he's trying to like get in their computer screen. And then the other classmates think it's funny. So they're like picking him up and putting him on there. And I'm like, no,
it becomes such a distraction for everybody.
Yeah.
I felt really bad for, it was just such a dilemma for everybody worldwide with the pandemic, and how do you deal with it? And then people still need to attend school and kind of learn, but then sitting your kid in front of a computer for hours. I hate sitting in front of a computer, and I'm an adult who's kind of realizing this, like I know that it's bad, but like I understand why I would have to do it. But for kids, and to have them sit and it's just the computer and the light and figuring, I didn't have to deal with it because my baby wasn't old enough or anything, but I felt bad for a lot of moms, for all the moms, all the parents. And then, if you only have one computer and the mom and the dad also have to work from home. How do you figure out that schedule? And what if it's stormy and the Wi-Fi goes out and then you can't get the homework in, and then figuring out the schedule of it all. I mean, it was just it seemed like such a mess, like just such a mess. And I'm thankful that I didn't have to go through it personally, but I felt really bad for those who did have to deal with it. And I know, of course, everyone figures it out, but it's so unfortunate to have to put your kids through it. And you're like, no, you have to sit here and like stare at the screen. And
yeah, it got to the point where like, because one of my kiddos, he already is like very hyperactive. So like he already has a hard time sitting still, like for that long, of a period. So I finally had gotten to the point where I would like text his teacher, like they have an app. So I would like message his teacher through the app and be like, look, he did not get, the lesson, or he didn't understand. Nothing is done on his paper. Like, what did you guys do? Like, what was your schedule? So that when he's ready today, I can sit down with him and now do it, So then it was like trying to communicate that way with the teachers, and they're, beyond frustrated with having to figure out the Zoom, and you're no longer seeing these kids in person, and then they've got all these distractions in the backgrounds with parents. And I just feel so bad for even the teachers that had to do it, like it was crazy. It was just complete crazy, like chaos.
Yeah. And so going through that, since through the pandemic and kind of COVID, you had entered staying at home, and then because of the schooling chaos, you had switched over to doing homeschooling as well.
Well, I just called it homeschool just because they were at home, but they were still a part of their like public school that they go to.
Okay.
We just had to do it at home because the schools weren't open.
Yeah.
But it was like, I felt like I had to sit in the same room as them, hear the lesson that was going on. So then that way, when it came to like independent work, or if they just were not paying attention, I could then teach them like the same way that their teacher did. So then that it clicked and it made sense, because it was just crazy. And like one of my kiddos he sits there in front of the computer, but then he's like looking out the window and he's like trying to see what's going on in the other room.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't want to stare at the computer, so I don't blame them. And at least at school, they get to see like their friends, and there's that social aspect. And then now they're also kind of stuck at home. And so it's a lot for them to figure out and do. I'm currently trying to figure out, like, are we going to do public school or private school or homeschooling? But I'm actually leaning more towards homeschooling, because I think I'm 110% going to do homeschooling, but that's because I'm so needy and I just need to be with her and I want to be with her. But through my research, I'm kind of seeing that homeschooling actually, because I'm so overwhelmed by the idea, because I'm like, I don't even remember what the heck I learned in whatever grade. So I would also need to listen. Yeah, I would need to listen to the teachers like you would, because I'd be like, first you have to teach me again, so then I can explain it, because I don't freaking remember,
Yeah.
And from what I'm finding out, it's almost like less work, because certain homework that's given in public school is, to reiterate certain things, because you can't sit down with a kid one-on-one and explain everything. So it's kind of a lot of reiteration. And so when you're homeschooling, at least from what I gathered, it could be a lot simpler and a little less time consuming. Because I was like, oh my gosh, I remember going to school from like 8 a.m. to like 3 p.m. I can't teach a kid for all that long, but it's simplified where they still get all the information. They give you like a course outline of what they need to learn and what you need to get through to them. But it seems like it's a little bit easier than what I had originally made up in my mind.
Yeah. So like on TikTok, there's a mom that I follow who like she did homeschooling with all of her kids, and then now she's like helping other parents do homeschooling because we've played with the idea as well, like, is that something that I could do or whatever? And I had the same thoughts as you, like, I would have to teach them from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with them in all that time? Like,
yeah.
But like from what I've heard from her and stuff, because I haven't dug too far into it, but it's like you don't have to do social studies and science every single day. Like it's maybe thrown in once or twice a week, and so you're not getting through this, thick book.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it does definitely seem like it's less time consuming than we think it would be.
That's what I'm kind of gathering too. And from what I remember in my school, and I went to a public school, we had a huge school. Like it was 4,000 kids. We had 1,000 that graduated. Like we were I think, fourth biggest school in the country. Like it was just bananas. Geez. But it was a lot of just memorizing. And for me, I just memorized, took a test, wrote it all down, and then I forgot about it, which isn't the way to learn. But like I just memorized it, spit it out, memorize it, spit it out. And so I literally couldn't tell you what the heck I learned in those grades because not that I'm dumb, it's just the way I did well in school was to memorize it. And then I cleared my data and then I loaded up on more information. Then I spit it
yeah.
And so I would rather her not learn that way. I want her to, know history and know math. But I from what I've seen, it's instead of like the 6 hours in school, it's only about 3-hour chunk where you just like focus on things. And then the other time you can still like play outside or use, if she's into painting, let's, at the early age, it's like, oh, you have 5 brushes. Now you have 3 brushes. Now you have 8, use those skills and then example them in the real life through their passion or hobbies or things they like to do. So then it kind of like you learn it and then it sticks and you learn, kind of make little metaphors and little examples of the real life, which I think then will stick even better.
Mm-hmm.
And I just get to spend more time with my baby because I'm obsessed. Like, I don't want her to go anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. And right now, just politically, things are a little crazy. So you hear these stories where there are certain teachers who have certain agendas, who have certain ideas. And I wouldn't want anything pushed on my baby that she's not responsible for or, certain things that I wouldn't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And I also personally, so this is just kind of out there, but in high school, I had this cheer coach who we all knew, like my whole team, we all knew hated me. And I didn't do anything. Like I was such a good student and I was just like above and beyond, did so many things. And it was just like, I'm an overachiever. And so I didn't do anything wrong,
Right.
But she just did not like me. Like she wished she could get me off the team, but she couldn't because I was so like good and like I did what I needed to do. And she tried everything to just like, she didn't like me. And so the only thing that we could come up with was like, maybe in her high school days, somebody named Lily like stole her boyfriend or something like so personal from like a previous life that has nothing to do with me, but like has attached itself to me now. But I remember that experience. And like, I loved cheer and dance. And like, certain times at practice, I would hate to go to practice because I'm like, man, it's just going to be terrible, like being there with her,
Yeah.
And I don't want that for my kid. Like, I don't want somebody hating her just because of her name or whatever they might attach to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, like, I just don't want that BS on her because what the heck? Like, I don't know what my coach was dealing with and her own personal trauma, but like it somehow came out at me. And I don't know what the teachers are up to and what certain things they deal with on daily lives. So I like am so terrified of what they're going to want to pass on to my baby. Like, hey, you should.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So before COVID and them shutting everything down, like I loved that the school that my kids went to and stuff, they, like parents could come in to the classroom and like volunteer or just hey, I'm free from this time to this time. I can come in and help with either a lesson, or like sometimes parents would come in and just help like grade stuff or whatever. But then they were able to like listen in to like what was being taught,
Yeah.
which I was like on rotation it was like once a month I would go in and help with on Friday, like fun activity or whatever.
Sure.
But now that COVID has happened, you literally cannot come on campus. Like,
it's kind of scary.
You cannot go into those bedrooms. You cannot go into those classrooms. Like with that, it is scary. Like, and it's what is being talked about, what is being done in the classroom, and then all I get is what my kids tell me, and half the time it's like, oh, what'd you learn today? I don't know. And I'm like, no, I want to know, like, what kind of math did you guys do? Double digit adding or whatever? Like, what did you do? And
but it's so weird because, like, it could be so simple. Let's say this is so, again, out there, but let's say the teacher, like, hates dogs. And so their math example is going to be like, first there was 3 dogs and then you didn't like 2. So then you got rid of them. And like, yes. And the kid's just like, this is a math problem, whatever. But they walk away and they're like, oh yeah, dogs are bad. Like, it's just, it's such a quick, small connection with these small things, or like little side comments that could be made. Or if the teacher hates her parents and just constantly talks poorly about, oh, my mom was bad, or my mom was this. Like, if your kid gets in a fight with you and goes to school, then this teacher's like in their ear, oh yeah, I hate my mom too. I hate my mom too. And you're just like, no, I just, they wanted a green cup. I gave them a green cup, but they were mad about it. Like, but now you're telling my kid I'm a bad mom because I technically gave them what they,
it's like brainwashing them almost. Yeah.
But it's based on whatever personal trauma the teacher's going through.
That person, yep.
But I just don't want it on my kid. Like, you need to go wash that stuff off, go take a shower. You handle it.
Yeah.
I don't want it on my kid. And I saw it. I'm sure it was like one example, but I'm sure there are plenty more, where this news story came out where it was a teacher the kids were learning over Zoom, and a parent overheard a teacher expressing like, hey, make sure you don't tell your parents. And the parent's like, what is it that you're telling them not to tell me? And in what way would you at all think it's okay? And how did you not think we were going to be in the room listening?
Yeah.
But I was so shocked by it. And the school didn't want to do anything about it. There's a whole thing. And I was just like, in what world does a teacher at all want to say like, hey, don't tell your parent? Like, that's like, I don't know. That's what like pedophiles say when they're grooming kids. And I'm so just terrified of all of that. But like that was, as soon as anyone tells my baby, don't tell your parents, you
better come and tell
authority.
Me. Like, yeah.
And I'm telling our like grandmas and everyone, like, make sure you never ask her to keep a secret. Because as soon as it takes one person, it's like, oh, don't tell mommy that I gave you ice cream. And then it's like, oh, I can keep secrets with other people. Like,
no.
Not that I need to know everything. It just, while I still need to protect you, and there's so much weirdness out there, and I have seen it personally, and I've been in these situations that I'm so thankful for God for getting me out of them, that people are twisted and they will use these ways and they will do these little things of, and it's called grooming. You use these little ways of get to the kid, you get their attention. I was listening something to yesterday, but they were referring to that con man comes from confidence man, because they give you confidence that you can trust in them. And so it's like, hey, here's $5. I'm going to pay you back. And then they pay you back and you're like, all right. And then he's like, can I borrow $10? I'm going to pay you back. And they do. And then the next time I need $5,000, but I've always paid you back. And you're like, oh, sure, of course. And you give them $5,000 and they take advantage of you. And it just, but they give you that little bit of confidence that you're like, hey, I'm somebody you can trust. I'm somebody you can rely on. I'm somebody who's better than your parents. And I can tell you all that, and just these little seedlings, they just keep planting them. And then you can't even talk to your kid, because now all of a sudden you're the terrible person, because again, you gave them the green cup that they asked for, but the teacher has a whole different agenda. And so I'm probably overthinking, but that's something that's so like enrooted in my head that I'm like, I don't want my kid anywhere near that.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's like, it makes me think of like the Ted Bundy stories and what was that Netflix movie or documentary that just came out? And it was like this guy had groomed like the whole family.
Wow.
And what is it, like abducted?
I don't know, but I need to see this.
I'll have to look it up and I can
You have to send it to me. I would love it. I love watching this stuff, but
yes, like he attached to one of the daughters and was like, but he was like grooming the dad and the mom and all the other, family members to get them all comfortable with them. And then he just like took off with the daughter. Or with the one that and then like listening to what the parents allowed because they were so brainwashed by this guy and like so trusting of this guy. I'm like, what? They let him do what? Like,
that's the weird part. That's the weird part is that you don't
abducted. It's called Abducted in Plain Sight.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up.
Is what it's called, and I watched it on Netflix. So
okay, I'm gonna look that up. But that's the whole thing is that you don't know that it's happening while it's happening. And all the interviews you talk to people afterwards are like, I had no idea they would do that. They were such a great neighbor. They were such a great uncle. They were a family friend. I would never expect this from them. This is crazy. And you just don't know that it's happening. There's a whole bunch of like, sex traffickers and like those who have been trafficked, but they don't necessarily even know that they're doing something illegal or bad for their body or bad for themselves because they've just been so trained and told that this is the right thing, and they get positive reinforcement through conditioning that they're like, oh, selling my body for others to, like, they think it's normal. So you just think it's normal, and it's so hard to like explain that to people or to even grasp yourself because you're like, well, if you're in a similar to like a abusive relationship, you're like, why wouldn't you just get out? Because you just get you get adjusted to it. You think it's part of the normal life. Just like we get adjusted to motherhood where you just figure it out. Things change and you figure it out. And then you're not getting any sleep or you're like, well, that's just part of it. And we get adjusted the same way to like negative things. We're like, oh, that's just part of it. And I don't want that for my kid. I'm going on a rant, but that's just where it is. I'm like,
and you just feel like these are my babies. And it is my job to protect them, And so it's like, let me think of, like, my mind goes to all the bad things that could happen. And then it's like, okay, I need 50 ways on how I'm going to protect them from this, And so I totally get it. 100%.
You just want to protect them. You want what's best. You want them to succeed in life in whatever way that means to them, whether it's writing stories or owning a boat or like whatever it is they're passionate about, whatever success means to them, you want to just root them and like, yes, go, yes,
I'll be your biggest fan.
And of course you don't want anything to hurt them. And so when you hear these stories, I think in your mother way, you're just like, I don't want this to happen to my kids. So what are the things that I need to do to prevent this evil from ever entering their life? Because once those demons, those evil voices start whispering, it's so easy to just like one slip to another slip to another slip. And then when you look back, you're like, wow, I have really fallen. I have really fallen down this mountain and I didn't really notice because,
it's just so trivial little things.
It's just little elevation at a time and you get used to it. And then you get lower and then you get used to it and you're like, oh, all right. But then you're just like below and you can't even grasp for air almost because you're like, how did I get here? And then you start feeling bad because all of the stuff that say you had to go through or how'd you get there and you just came and ask for help. It just becomes such an avalanche of emotions. And I don't want that for anybody. You want people to be with clear hearts and clear minds where they can just go for things and feel like they can achieve anything. But if there's trauma or there's bad decisions or anything that's sitting in the back of their mind, that's going to keep you second guessing, or it's going to keep, just eating at you, it becomes almost impossible to stand up straight and like assert yourself and say like, hey, I'm going to go and do that. Like it just, it's so intertwined and it's so,
Yes.
Gets me.
Yeah, it's motherhood is hard. I think parenting just in general, like, is just hard. Like, and you're figuring it out as you go, basically.
Well, because you're no longer just taking care of yourself and watching out for yourself to make good decisions. Now you have taken on someone else and you're like, hey, I want to make sure that you're making the right decisions, what you think is going to be right. I want you to know how to make right decisions. I want you to be able to hear both sides and learn what is it that is, what should I take away from it and what should I just let go, and what's, especially as a kid, you just trust that what people are telling you is the truth.
Yep.
And then when you learn, you're like, wait, people can lie to you and people can be conniving and mislead. Like, to learn that skill to be able to differentiate between someone's trying to take advantage of me through their words or through their gifts or through their mannerisms, and when somebody actually is being truthful and honest and they're offering their heart and their skills and gifts, to be able to just see who is being genuinely, authentically honest,
right,
and who is going to take advantage of me, because whatever it is that they're doing it to get something out, and in no way is that going to, like, it's just going to lead to some sort of a bad decision somewhere down the line, because it's not, if it's not coming from true authentic self, it's coming from a bad place, and it's going to attach itself and then just suck at you, just eat at you.
Yes. Yes,
you get it.
I do.
Mikhaila, I love talking to you, but I do have to kind of cut it shorter.
Yeah, no problem.
But I love talking to you. So if you want to hop on again, we can schedule another podcast. I know you have a podcast. If you want to talk about it and plug yourself in so people know.
Yes. So I know, it's not going to be for everybody, but myself, I'm more like a conservative woman. So I just created a podcast called Confirming Conservative Women. Awesome. And that's the name, like, on all the social media platforms. We're basically on every any platform that you can also, like, listen to a podcast. I have that on as well. And we talk about anything, like, having to do with being a woman, being a mom, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like all political matters, and it's not. It's just, I like to talk about things the way that I see them or that I feel about the issues, and I don't want to have to worry about, like, stepping on anybody's toes or anything. Like, I just want to be able to say how I feel without having all the backlash, So that's why I created the podcast. And also, like, I just needed something for me, like, outside of being a mom and being a wife and taking care of the house and stuff. Like, I just needed an outlet for me. So I feel like it's just a fun way for other women like me to be able to just talk, hang out. And I hope that that's what the listeners get as well.
Awesome. And I think it's important that, like, I think those who align with your values and your views could listen to it and feel like their opinions are validated through your opinion because they align. But those who don't, I think it would be important to listen to it as well, because then you get to hear the other side, and see why they see certain things a certain way.
That way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it doesn't always have to be, like, you're wrong, I'm right. It's just, how do you see something? And then, when you see it explained that way, you're like, oh, I can see where you're coming from. And you don't have to change your mind. You don't have to be like,
no,
oh, that's different. You're just like, oh, I can see where you're coming from. And I think if we do
see
more
why
of
you think that way.
Yeah, I think that could be the uniting thing that we're missing right now, because everyone's so eager and quick to, like, that's not how I do it, and that's wrong. The same with, like, motherhood, where it's like, you're not mothering right, and it's like, no, let's just talk about it. And if it's not for you, great, but at least you can see where I'm coming from, because that's how I feel in my heart. And if your opinion differs, I think that's really cool. I'm willing to listen to you.
Exactly.
I don't have to agree. We never have to agree. I don't know why everyone thinks everyone needs to be on the same page all the time.
No, and that's what drives me crazy too, is like, yes, I may feel and think one way, but I am more than willing to listen to your side, and I may not agree with it, but I'm still going to respect you about it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to be enemies now because we don't think a certain way on a topic or whatever the case may be, like, we can still be friends and respectful to each other. And so you're right. Like, even if you don't agree, you could listen and feel, or be able to see, how I feel and where I'm coming from on certain topics.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to listen to it. And if you'd love to talk again, I'm down for it.
Yes.
But we can get in touch after this. So thank you for your time,
good.
Mikhaila. I appreciate
Bye.
you being on. Bye. Thanks, everybody. Okay, thanks, everybody. I will see you at my next episode. Bye.